Hello. In today's video, we're going to be testing out the Museum Aquarelle watercolor pencils. I swatched them out in a previous video and I'll link to that in the description below. But today we're going to paint up a piece of a design I have for a wallpaper. I've traced it out very faintly onto this piece of paper, which you can barely see. So you can see a bird and some leaves. So it's just a small part of the design. We'll colour it up today using these watercolour pencils, and I'll give you some tips which I think are really useful when using watercolour pencils. To start with, I'm just going to outline the leaves because I can barely see them, and I'm sure that's also the case for you. I'm using a grey. This is the steel grey. It's got 5-star light rating. This is just going to make it a bit easier for me to see what I'm doing. Okay, that's all the flowers, and then we'll go back to the grey, onto the stems. The pencil that I used initially to make the outline is non-watercolour pencil, but I've done it so faintly that I don't think any of it will remain, or will be visible anyway. It'll definitely remain, but I'm not sure it'll be visible. Okay, that's all the leaves, and so I've just got to do the bird in the middle. So the bird, this comes to my tip number 1. You can use underneath your watercolour pencil a non-watercolour pencil, and that pencil line will resist when you put down the water, so it will stay. And that can be really useful if you want to get texture or have some markings in there that you want to remain. And that's the case on my bird. I'm going to mark in his feathers in this. This is a luminance pencil. Blue, I can't pronounce it. Oh dear. Can't even barely read it. Chrysocolla blue, number 671. So I'm just gonna, because this is supposed to be a bluebird, so I'll just mark in these leaves, these feathers on his body, and these lines will remain unless I were to put down a really dark wash over him, and then you might not see them, but otherwise they will remain. And then I'll just go back to the steel blue, the steel grey to outline the rest of his body, just to make it a bit easier for me to see. So I'm going to use this pale light cobalt blue on the bird's body just to get an underpainting, first layer down, so that I can do a wash, because I don't particularly enjoy having white as a background. So I'll just put this down and then we can work over it. This table is so wobbly when I'm working with coloured pencils. It's one of those ones that's got a central stand and then it's a round table, so it just wobbles because it doesn't have the 4 legs to support it, which might suggest I should go and work somewhere else to do these videos, but this is the best spot really. I'm putting down a heavier pencil here in the leaves. I keep calling them the leaves, in the feathers, just so they get a bit more colour. When I swatched out these colours, this one here was extremely pale, so it shouldn't stain too much, but I thought it would be perfect for a first layer. I actually really like it like that. I'm not sure I even want to put the water down. It's a really lovely purpley blue. Just work up a bit more colour in the body. I'll put some colour onto the leaves first before I add the water, I think. So we'll get the first base layer down of coloured pencils and then we'll turn to the water. I'm going to put a base layer of steel grey on the leaves because I want it to be a kind of grey green, and I couldn't see the exact colour that I wanted in among the pencils I had, so this should hopefully give that kind of grey feeling on the background. I'm going in as soft as I can, with the exception of a few lines here, because I want this just to be a background and not to influence too much. But if I did want it to influence too much, that brings me to my second tip, which is to put down heavy marks where you want the watercolour pencil to remain, because the watercolour pencil, as we saw on, this is my swatching sheet that I did last time, you can see that here you can actually see the pencil marks where they were. It's not too bad, but you can definitely see that there was some residue there as opposed to where I swatched it out here, diluted it with the water. So if you want that texture, and that is something that I do want in this painting, you can take that to your advantage, use it to your advantage, and just put down heavier marks. I'll do it on this leaf here. And those ones should stay. So you've got some texture in the leaf, but you can also go over it with other colours too. So I'll continue on with these leaves. I won't do the flowers just yet because I'm not sure what colour I want them to be. So I'm going to get the water now and start to just go over those leaves and give them some base colour. This is my third tip. Use very little water when you're doing this because I don't want it to run anywhere. I just literally want the colour pencil to dilute and go into the paper and cover that tooth. And that's pretty much all that I want to happen at this stage. You can see here on this one where I did those darker lines, they're just visible there, and that's great. We'll probably go over it later, but I can do it again with the second colour. But I just want these to be very faint and have a base colour so that the green can go on top and then hopefully take on a teeny bit of the grey or be influenced by it, so it goes more towards a grey green than a vibrant green. So those are the leaves. I'll have to wait for them to dry before I can go back to them. So in the meantime, let's go on to the bird's body. Again, I'm going to use very little water because I just want to move this pigment. I don't want it to swish around in a great big puddle of water. I just want it to dilute slightly. And I'm going over that luminance pencil, which, as you can see, is not moving, which is perfect. So that just gives me a base for my feathers, not leaves. And maybe the bird needs some feet. That could be a good idea. There we go. And I'll just colour in the beak in this grey colour, going harder on the underside, so that should remain more. And then just lightly touching it with a very damp brush, just to move the pigment and give it so that it transforms from a coloured pencil look to a watercolour look, but not to give it too much water that it spills everywhere and starts bleeding and creating all sorts of marks that I don't want. So I'm feeling like purple. I'm feeling like I'm going to stick with that purple for the flower. So we'll go back to that, wherever it was. I'll do the centre in this nice light purple. Pressing quite hard now. Again, the amount of water that you add also affects how dark the colour stays. If I were to add lots of water, it would become very diluted and become much lighter, whereas if I just put hardly any and a thick lay down of pencil, then I should get a much deeper colour. I'm going to add some lines onto the petals of the flowers, and I'm going to press quite hard so that I just get some markings there, just to kind of give that impression that the petal is darker towards the centre. They're not accurate, they don't have to be accurate, it's just to create a bit of a sense of colour. And for the third flower, I'm going to use a slightly darker purple. This is the manganese violet. I'll add a few of those darker ones into this bigger flower as well. And these won't stay looking exactly how they are, but there should be some indication that there was more pigment there. Okay, now I think the leaves have dried, so I'm going to go in and add some green to the leaves. This one is cobalt green. It's more of a bluey green, so I'm going to put this on here. I'm trying to be as neat as I can, but if anything does go over the edge, I can always chop it off when I get into Photoshop. Again, I'm just adding some stronger marks with this pencil, just to give the leaves some texture. I'm going to put a different colour on the next group of leaves. This is going to be the chromium oxide green, which is a bit more yellowy. And again, I'm just pressing harder where I want a bit of texture. And then I'll choose a different green again for the third batch of leaves. I'll pick a dark olive one. I'm going to go over the stalks of the leaves with this green that I used here, just to unify them all. It's already got that grey initial line underneath, but I think that's fine. And I may or may not put the water over these. I don't think it's really necessary. It's kind of nice to have the change in textures between the watercolour feel and the colour pencil feel. But we'll see. I may do. We'll see. Okay, let's put the water on the leaves and see what happens. I'm going to put as little as I can, so just going in with a damp brush. I can always come in with more later, but I don't want to overdo it for the first batch. So you can see that it's still got some of that marking where I put down the pencil harder, but it just gives a really beautiful texture. It's not a kind of flat texture that you can get with some medium, but this is one of the reasons I really enjoy watercolour pencil, because you can get that feeling. You can get that feeling of texture. In a way, it's much easier to control this way than using pure watercolour itself, unless you're an expert at it. This way you can put down the pencil exactly where you want it, and then just control your water to this is a much brighter one. So I'm quite pleased with that. You can see I've definitely got all those nice pencil marks, which is exactly what I wanted. So now let's choose the purples for the flowers. Let me just get my chart. I want to use this one here. I think that's really beautiful. Maybe those two there, and maybe that one there. So 506, 106 and 599. Okay, I'm going to put the lighter one at the top, that one there, and that there, and let's see what happens. I'm just going to go really light pressure so that I don't get any harsh marks, because that's not what I want right now. I just want a very basic covering, a very light wash. And then according to how I like it, I can go in afterwards. I'll just do the wash for all of the flowers first. And then this small flower here is the last one. Okay, let's do the water on the flowers. So again, as little water as I can. Taking more off. I just want it to be really damp, pretty much. Blending with the purple. The two colours are quite different from each other, so it's quite obvious, probably much more so than it will be in the other two flowers. But that's my fourth tip. Afterwards, once you've done the basic wash, you can go back in with your coloured pencils and go back over it, deepen the colour, change it how you would like, add more colour, take more colour out. So the first wash is not the finished product necessarily if you don't want it to be. When you add back in the colour pencil, you can add back in texture and that kind of pencil-y feeling. But the wash just gives it a really nice base colour and gets rid of the white of the paper. And the final one, this is that red wine colour. Absolutely beautiful. So here I'm not really touching the centre of the flower, I'm just going on the petals and going over the purple where I've kind of avoided it in that one. But I might go back to it. I think I'll just go into the purple here as well. And then when that's dry, we can come back in. So let's go to the bird now. I'm just going to put down some more of that colour that I initially had down, just to get some more texture in there, give it a bit more of a base. And then we can add some more colour in as well with a different one. But I think it's such a beautiful colour. It's really delicate. Okay, now I need a bit more of a contrast colour. So I'm going to go for the genuine cobalt blue and just put some of that in. Unfortunately, my video stopped recording when my alarm went off. So in the meantime, since it stopped recording, I went back over these flowers and I just coloured them in, made that one a bit darker, gave it some texture on the leaves and that one there. And that's pretty much all I've done. And now I'm coming in with the leaves, with a bit more green on the leaves. So you can decide when you're done adding water and then just keep the texture of the pencils over it. So I think on these leaves, I'm definitely done with adding the water because I'm liking the texture that I'm getting now. Just add some more on that one as well. And this leaf, I'm going to go over it with this green here, the same green that I've used on this leaf, just to see if I can tone down some of that brightness and just bring it back into a bit more green rather than yellowy feel. There's just one thing I want to do still to that flower at the top, which is put some of this more pink colour on it because I feel like I messed it up. So I just want to make it look a bit better. And that's, yeah, I'm liking that better. I'm not going to go back over with water because I feel like that's good. I'm just going to put some more of this brighter pink into this flower, just some hints of it. And over that one just as a unifying since I've got it on the other two. And all that remains is to do some more blue on my bird. I was going to come in with this light blue, I think. Just building up the colour around his head in the direction of the feathers. Thicken up his legs a little bit. And there it is. So I hope you enjoyed that, and you can see that there are different ways to use the watercolour pencils. So just to go over my top tips, one, you can use a non-watercolour coloured pencil underneath, which will stay in place and not get moved around when you put the water on top. 2, you can press hard to create lines that you wish to stay there to create texture in your drawing. And number 3, if you want things to be more easy to control, then try and use as little water as possible just to kind of move the pigment but not to create big puddles everywhere. Bonus tip number 4, you can go back in afterwards with your coloured pencils and create more texture on top and more depth and more colour. So I hope that was useful. Hope you enjoyed it. See you in the next one. Bye.